He had 2 children by one, and he had me with my mother. And he was a cattle buyer. And I don't know how much he made. Elsa never told me what he made, but he must have made good money, because in the event of his death, he was to get the survivors were to get $100 a week. Now this is in 1917.
That's a lot of money.
1917. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. My father died in the flu epidemic, and he went like an 8 days bingo. They were dying so fast you couldn't even buy a casket. You had to wait. So anyway, my business turned a little crappy. So the company that my father worked for was a family-owned business. Excuse me. And they decided they're going to borrow the money from the pension fund until the time.
That sounds familiar, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's true, it repeats itself.
Comes back. See, well, business never came back. So the only thing that left for them to do was to sell it. So they sold the company to Armour. And of course, Armour went over the books, and they said, "We're not responsible for the pension fund. The money's not here." So the widows all got together and they sued, but they lost. And that same bullshit goes on today. It hasn't changed. The damn congressmen sit there and I don't know what they do during the day, but they don't tend to business. It's terrible. So we had an uncle that had a dry goods store. He was successful, so he took the two children, and my mother moved in with her mother. She had to go to school. She took shorthand, and then she worked her way up. She was a secretary to the president of the bank, and then when the crash came, the bank found all these. They owned all these buildings, so they asked my mother if she would take the job of running the buildings, which she did. But you see, the government loaned money to the big banks in Chicago. The outlying banks got nothing. They said, let them close.
Sounds familiar again, doesn't it?
Sounds just like now again.
That's right. That's right. That's what happened. So I remember my mother come home and says, "Oh boy, I'm out of a job." Fortunately, the lawyer, who was I don't know whether he was the head lawyer for the bank, but anyway, he opened up his own office and he hired my mother. So my mother didn't really do without work. But I tell you, it's something else.
When Franklin was in town 4 or 5 years ago, we went to the old neighborhood, and the house is still there that he lived in. Your grandpa or uncle built that house?
Built it, yeah.
And we were standing out in front, and a nice young lady was sitting there, and she's sitting there, and she said, "Can I help you guys?" And we said, "Well, my uncle grew up in this house," and she said, "Would you like to come in?" And we went up to the second floor where you lived, same bathtub, same, it was just...
Same everything.
And that was, 60 years, 70, 80 years ago? The house is still there.
Yeah.
What are you going like this for? Why, was the house leaning a little bit?
Yeah.
Those steps were in bad shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guess what? 80 years later, you're not in such good shape either.
No. And in those years, they didn't use steel. They used all wood timbers. Those houses on Melrose Street.
Melrose Street, that's where it was.
And today, Andy used to send me the ads. They'd have houses for sale on Melrose Street, $275,000. I said, "You got to be out of your goddamn mind to pay that for an old building." They still had the gas fixture in the bedroom where you'd light it,
Yeah.
And for somebody that likes antiques,
Yeah, but that big clawfoot bathtub looks like a swimming pool.
oh yeah,
It's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
yeah, was it big?
So,
Now, who lived on the first floor?
Uncle Tress.
Okay.
And Grammy lived in the basement. You know, it was a basement apartment.
Right.
I love to tell. Gabriel was a nurse that I hired when I had a heart attack, and she lived here with two other women. They took turns, and they cooked and baked and did the laundry and took care of the cleaning in the house and everything. And she's a very health conscious woman. She only eats. She's strictly a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And she says if you read the Bible, you want to live to be 170 years old, you got to do what the people did then. They just ate fruit and grains. And they didn't eat any meat or fish or chicken and pasta and all this processed crap. You know. And I told her when my grandmother used to bake, Monday was wash day. And Tuesday was ironing, and Wednesday she baked. And she'd buy the butter, a big thing like that. She'd grab a hunk of butter and pump in the pot, stir it up. And of course, the vegetarians, they don't eat any butter or any of that stuff. They say clogs the veins.